and there's big ones and there's little ones. We've got activists and big groups and organisations who have issues that they care about. We've got political commentators who are interpreting everything that's going on. We've got the media that's collecting all this stuff up and beating it out again. We've got universities and academia who are interested in this from a long-term trends sort of perspective. We've got civic hackers and coders who want to do cool stuff. And then down here we've got the disengaged young people. And lots of them aren't interested, but even more of them don't even know that this is all happening. In a Massey University survey a couple of months out from the election, 92% of the people they asked didn't know what date the general election was. Yeah, sometimes they're not interested, sometimes it's just completely off the radar. So the next thing to think about was, that's everyone that's there. What is it that they actually want? So political parties, very, very easy, they want votes. And they want a really easy, convenient way of engaging because they're very busy at that time of year. But also these little guys, little parties, less media opportunities than the bigger parties, so they were willing to work a little bit harder for their votes. And that was something that was useful. Activists and organisations want attention for their cause, want to raise awareness and get as much leverage as possible. These political commentators were looking for these big meta-narratives to put everything into. And I noticed that one of the things that people were talking a lot about was the way that social media was changing political communication. So I was like, okay, tie into that. Media wanted stories. Often lots of their stories were about how young people weren't voting, which is unhelpful actually, because the research shows that the more that you talk about the fact that people aren't voting, the less likely people are to vote, because we'll do something if we know that everyone else is doing it, but if we keep hearing that nobody's doing it, then we're less likely to do it. The universities have research themes. So Massey University, I noticed, had a research theme about 21st century citizenship. The civic hackers were interested in ideas about transparency and accountability with government and with representatives, and keeping things open. And so all of these different groups had something that I wanted from them. I knew that they could all help the project in some way. But now I'd sort of gone through all of us thinking I could start to think about, okay, this is what they want. And the young people, probably the hardest ones to try and figure out what it was that they wanted, because often it's just to be left alone. But I'll go into that a bit more. But my suggestion would be that it doesn't matter if it's a user or a stakeholder or a collaborator or a contributor, always try and make an offer when you're asking for something. Especially the first time, the first iteration of the project, we had no budget. I didn't have really anything to offer people, especially apart from this would be cool. But it was great to be able to think that through, and I think people did get a lot out of it. And as an example of how that worked, the second time round, by tying this project in with Massey's strategic research themes, we managed to get funding through their Strategic Innovation Fund, because we made it clear how it tied into the themes and also how it was going to build their reputation for civic responsibility. So always worth thinking through that stuff. So that takes us back to what it is that the young people wanted. And how would we get them to actually use the site? So the first piece of research that I did was sat down with a bunch of 18 to 24-year-olds and we made some timelines. And I just asked them, what were you doing, thinking and feeling in the lead up to the election last time round? Where were you getting your information from? Who were you talking to? And where were you losing interest? Where were you getting interested again? And this was really just a way to structure a conversation. And we found out I found out really useful things. One was that people really get their information through Facebook in this age group, even if it was just news article links, that they're finding them because their friends were sharing them on Facebook. So that was important. Also, people were getting really annoyed at the media about this point here. And that was because it was lots of the coverage is so conflict-oriented, it's so petty, and people really weren't enjoying that. But also that some people who were saying, I'm not interested, it's not that relevant to me, but yeah, I'm still going to vote because, you kind of have to, everyone does, it's important. And that just showed to me how important that social pressure is, even if you're not interested. Cool. So the next thing I did was put together some personas, and these were based on some of that research that I'd just done, and also on some qualitative research that the Electoral Commission commissioned in 2007. So we had the evangelist cat, and I used cats because I didn't really want to focus on demographics like age and ethnicity. I just wanted to think about people's behaviour and their attitudes. And also, people like talking about cats. So the evangelist cat is always engaged in issues, even outside of election time. They've probably got a specific thing that they're really into, and they're looking for tools to help further their agenda. The upstanding cat is the good citizen. They're going to vote because they know they should. They're going to do their duty. They probably don't really like getting in heated conversations about politics, but they'll read up around election time. They'll make sure that they're informed because they know that that's what they've got to do. And they're pretty confident about how to do it. This is the uncertain cat. They might be a first-time voter. They're not sure about the process. It's all a bit scary. They really don't want to look dumb because it's quite confusing. And if something came up that meant they didn't have to vote, then they'd be quite happy about it. But if somebody really encouraged them or made it easy, they'd probably do it. And talking to young people, they said, oh yeah, that's the one that could really use some help here. The uninterested cat is probably never going to vote anyway. There's nothing you can do about them. But if you can get the uncertain cats, that's probably where you can do the most good.
Did you draw all this?
Yes. What I did with the personas was put them together based on some observations and then show them to users and use them as a discussion point. And I was saying, do you recognise these? Are you one of them? Do you know people who are the other ones? And also, who's missing from this list? And it was a great way for me to check my assumptions. People figured out things that were missing, like the apathetic evangelist, the non-voter who's very passionate about non-voting and will give you a big speech about it. So that was good. It was a good way for me to sort and store all of my research. So everything that I was noticing about users, I could sort of file it under one of these things mentally. And if something came up that didn't fit in, then that was, okay, maybe there's someone I've missed here. And we used them to make decisions later on. So, for example, we were deciding which content to prioritise on the homepage, and we had this trending algorithm. And we were like, okay, do people want the newest, freshest, like just ask question, or do they want the all-time favourite, most voted for questions? And we thought back to those uncertain cats, and one of the people I interviewed had said, yeah, they'd want to make sure that, they'd kind of covered their bases and they knew everything that they should know about. They'd want the top 40 if politics was a top 40. So we thought, okay, we'll make sure that the stuff on the homepage has some weight to it. It's not just the newest thing, that that you're looking at something that other people care about as well. And it meant also that we could stay in touch with our users. So me and the technical lead, John Lemon, could have these conversations about what the uncertain cat needed. And it was a great way for me to take this sort of vague research that I'd been doing and put it in a form that we could have conversations across the team about what users wanted. And I feel like this would help my dad when he was struggling to understand why his stakeholders were telling him to build all this stuff, if he knew about the cats and things. So they're really useful. They're really worth doing. Cool. So how to make them? A couple of points missing off this list, but if you're interested in making personas, there are some good things online. I saw that usability.gov, which is the US government's usability website, have a good guide. But what I did was basically just talk to lots of users, helps to do some structured interviews, because then you can start looking for patterns and differences across different groups. Real quotes really help because that way they're authentic, they feel authentic. If you have any analytics or feedback from an existing platform, then definitely plug that into it because it's great, if you've got real data to support what you're observing. And prioritize them. So when you make personas, it doesn't have to be every single different use case. It's just the main important user groups. So figure out who it is that is important, and then show them to people, show them to your target audience and see if they resonate with them. And then show them to the rest of the team and make sure that everybody knows what an uncertain cat is. So once I'd done this research, and also a lot more kind of mind mapping and messy design thinking stuff, we got to the point where we had 3 very high-level user needs, and that really guided the development from there and all the features. So we were thinking, I need information to come to me where I am, and that meant on Facebook. It wasn't enough to hope that people might go to this website. We needed to get this content onto Facebook and Twitter. I need information that's easy to understand. Everything's really confusing, and there's a lot of jargon around elections and politics. And along with that easy to understand, we knew that the site had to be really easy to use, because the more effort that your users spend trying to figure out how the buttons work, the less brain space they have to figure out what the difference in policy platforms are between the 3 centre parties. So we really had to minimise the load on them there. And also, it needed to be engaging. So people needed to feel like they had a role to play, it was relevant, they could use a voice, and also that they could see that everyone else was also doing that. So this mind map here is those 3 goals, and then we started brainstorming features relating to those goals. And from that, we got onto our wireframes. So here we had pretty clearly defined concept. It's a question and answer platform, and we knew why we were doing what we were doing, which was great. And